up, gamers? Today on Dice and Dragons, we are actually going to be giving you our final thoughts on Aeon's End Legacy by Indie Boards and Cards, an action phase game. The game is designed by Kevin Riley and Nick Little. Now, before we start our conversation about the game, for those of you that don't know much about Aeon's End or this version of it, I'll let Julie give you a quick lowdown.
So it's for ages 14 and above. It's a 1 to 4 player game that plays in about 60 minutes, though I find that it's longer than 60 minutes, especially now that we've played it many, many times. I'd say if you're really lucky at 60 minutes, it's probably more around the 90 to 120 minute, even once you get a handle of the game, I believe.
I don't know. I felt like our last play was closer to the 60-minute mark now that we gotten the flow down. But I will agree with you that if you're still doing the preamble, setup, and teardown, it's definitely closer to the 90-minute mark due to the legacy elements of the game. With that being said, we're just going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. This is really our final thoughts on the game. We're going to just have a conversation about the game. For those of you that do not know what Aeon's End is, this is a cooperative deck building game where you have a static deck of cards, meaning that you're going to be adding to. You will never shuffle your deck, and that is a key strategy. What you're trying to do is protect the city of Gravehold and defeat the nemesis that have come through an evil breach and have already destroyed the world, and you're just trying to survive it. Now, let's talk about this game. So, Julie, what did you think of Aeon's End Legacy, our first Legacy campaign game? This is not our first campaign game. We've played a fair bit of Descent, Imperial Assault, a few others, but this one's definitely a different experience for us.
Yeah, and I definitely think that anybody who's interested should probably read or watch our review first, our first impressions after halfway through the campaign, right? That would give an idea on the how to play and a little bit more about our initial thoughts.
Yeah, you'll be able to find, you'll find a link to that probably popping up right about now. There will also be a link at the end of this video.
So my initial thoughts were I was pretty freaked out about writing on cards, and I wasn't sure I liked the idea of cracking crystals and messing up cards and destroying them. And I have to say, after 4 rounds, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I liked the idea of it. Our characters were starting to get a little bit stronger. I have to say, even though they were very difficult, the last couple of rounds were a little bit more enjoyable. Our characters had powered up to the max.
And I think we were really finally playing the full version of the game. All the rules had finally come into play, and I thought we really got to see the Aeon's End system shine at that point.
Yeah, and I think at that point we figured out also that we can't be everything and do everything. We really do have to work cooperatively. And so for me, as difficult as it is, Jason jokes, I'm now at the point I like to blast everything. I would like to be the one that destroys the minions or the monsters. But you can't have both characters doing that, or you can't have all 4 characters doing that, because it basically thins out your efforts. And I think once we found the strategy and the fact that I had a character that used the best of its abilities. So, she could gain ether. So allowing her to gain as much ether to be able to support others, because it is a mechanism of the game, and I guess we should have said, spoiler alert, you shouldn't be watching this if you haven't played, but it would definitely have an advantage to be able to gain the ether and to be able to use your character, and when you're picking the things that you get to have, basically the powers or the tools that you get along the way, you really have to be strategic about it, and you can't just go for what seems like the coolest. You really have to make them work together.
And you definitely have to get a nice, like you say, a nice synergy, because certain abilities work better with other abilities, and it's very easy to combine things in a way that's not going to give you as much of an advantage as if you've done it differently. Now, I gotta say, I really enjoyed this legacy campaign experience. As Julie said, you're really starting off with a bare bones version of the Aeon's End system, and you're building up to become a full breach mage. Now the really cool thing about that is you get your own mage, something you're going to be able to carry on from this game back into the original game, Aeon's End War Eternal, the second game, as well as the upcoming game New Age, which is currently on Kickstarter. And I think we've really enjoyed this. We've actually gone ahead and picked up all of the rest of the content because it's similar to our other deck building games. It's definitely not as easy to sort of get to the table as Legendary. But if we're not in the mood for Legendary, I think this fills a nice niche where we're playing a game that's more challenging, a little bit, well, not a little bit more, I'd say it's a lot more cooperative depending on if we're going to be playing with 2 mages or 4 mages. One just recommendation now that we've actually gone through the entire game. If you do decide to play this with 2 players, you should build your other 2 mages at the same time. If you're not going to be using those to sort of play through the whole story again, it's very difficult to do without a reset pack, but you can definitely find a way to do it. It's probably just going to save you some time and also make sure you've got 4 unique mages that you can then take on to other Aeon's End content. But I have to say, I had the same hesitation as you. I really didn't want to be writing on cards, demolishing things, destroying things. Now, we're going to start getting a little bit more into spoiler territory as we're going to talk a little bit about what happens after the campaign now. So there's a warning. I might even have something, pop up to say warning spoilers, just for those of you that aren't really paying attention. But I think I've said it enough. Let's move on. Now, after you finish the campaign, you do have the end deck. Now, the end deck lets you reset the game and also adds cards that are slimmed down, less challenging versions of some of the cards that you have faced in the game. It also removes some of the legacy elements so that you're going to be able to play the game with any Aeon's End content. I thought that was really cool.
I'm going to be happy not to have those damaged crystals anymore.
Yes, that was really nice, being able to finally get rid of those. Now, you should keep them in case you ever want to, replay the mission, like the final mission. That's probably the only one that's very easily replayable. Maybe the final 2, without making too many changes.
Yeah.
But it was it was just a really cool mechanic to actually get our own version of the game. I knew that we were going to get that, but I think that Aeon's End Legacy succeeds at this far more than other legacy games. Whereas in games like Pandemic, you get your end state of the board. Through this, a lot of your character building is your character. You're not building the board. You're not really changing this whole scenario. And that also brings me to a little bit of the downside. I think we're finally able to talk a little bit more about the story. I think it's the story-wise, I will have to say, the story's interesting, but there's no legacy aspect to the story at all. You will end up at the same ending whether you succeed on your missions and beat all the bosses or whether you fail every single mission, and that's something that I really didn't like. And one thing in terms of presenting the world of Aeon's End, I think that the game does a very poor job. There's a lot of characters. There's definitely a lot of lore for people that have played through all the other Aeon's End games, but there's nothing in the rulebook. There's no who is Mist, who is Desmodia, why is Zaxos the way he is. There is none of that in the game, and I think that is a big miss. I've since picked up, like I just mentioned, the other Aeon's End content. There's none of that in the original game book. Don't know if it's different in War Eternal. Got it, but don't actually have it in my hands yet. And I like story, and I know Julie likes story as well, and that was a big miss for me. What do you think about that?
I as much as I love stories and I love reading, when it comes to games, I like to get them to the table and just play. I think the only place that's different for me is in Descent, where the story really is a part of the game, I feel.
Yeah.
In this case,
It wasn't, and
No.
that's my criticism. I think it could have been like Descent or Imperial Assault, whereas it just isn't in this game.
Yeah. I mean, for me, though, I think it took me a little bit longer to get into the idea and the strategy. I would have liked it to maybe be a little bit easier to get into that story. But afterwards, I think I have to say, first 4 versus last 4. I really enjoyed the last four more, even though they were much more complicated. And, you know, cards on the table, we failed that, what was it, the 7th or the 6th mission?
We failed the 6th. No, I think we got through the 6th. We failed the 7th.
3 times?
2 times, because we're only allowed to do it 2 times. We failed 2 times, and we also failed the 8th mission 2 times.
Yeah.
It's Malicer's Gift was very useful because there's definitely a level of randomness, especially in the more difficult missions. And if you're off by just like a turn, and for those of you that saw our CO2 review, we essentially lost our 8th mission because we were missing like one more turn, or 2 players needed like one more charge to get us through to the next phase. After that, it would have been night to the big bad.
Yeah.
No, I think we've covered everything. Is there anything else you want to say about the game? Do you want to change your score, or are you happy with the score that you gave it originally?
I think I'm happy with the score. I think I'm just more comfortable with it now, in the sense that I said I thought I could like it and I could see the potential. Well, it did. It was easier, and it was not easier. It was easier to play. I got the flow better in the second half, so I enjoyed it like I thought I would.
No, and I'm going to keep my same score. There's really nothing else that I want to say about the game. There's nothing I want to change. I'm definitely eager to see Aeon's End New Age, where they incorporate some of the older elements of the game and a more campaign-style system with the new expedition. So you guys should definitely take a look at that on Kickstarter if you do like Aeon's End. And I'm actually excited to just try regular old Aeon's End, not necessarily with the legacy component. Although, from what the game says, if we bring our mages into the regular Aeon's End, we might start tearing stuff up. So maybe we'll have to try with some of the named characters and hopefully find a little bit more of that backstory. I like story in games more than she does. It all depends on presentation. And I'm hoping that Aeon's End New Age does improve the presentation, because it really was not a strength of this one. But I did still like the gist of the story. It wasn't a bad story, just not presented well. So with that being said, Julie, what can people do?
Well, okay, we're going to do that first. So you can like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification button to find out when we release some new content for you. You can also see, as we alluded to before, some links to probably the other Aeon's End, to the review itself.
Yeah, and then as we keep going through Aeon's End content, there'll be more Aeon's End reviews and, yeah, probably not as many how to plays, but more reviews on the channel, as we fairly were covered on our last one. And the content below will definitely be changing over time. So it's now time for us to grab our drink, grab our best friend, and
we're going to keep playing games.
keep playing games.
Sounds like we're going to keep playing some Aeon's End.
Well, we've got 2 big boxes, all the expansions for all of the small boxes, and I'm already pledging the Kickstarter, so we'll definitely be playing some more of this. It's a nice...
In the future, because I'm sure you've got a brand new game lined up for me so we can review this week.
Yes, and don't forget, we're going to be starting our folklore campaign, which means we'll finally get that reviewed.